So that's another $3,200 a month that you get. So that's a big incentive.
Sure.
And that's usually the incentive that a lot of guys get contract marriages. I think the difference is so it's not like that would have always been a thing. That's always been a thing. I think what the difference is our society doesn't look at marriage the same way. So now people are like, oh, I'll just get married. And in a couple years
to get the bag.
We'll get the bag. And then once I'm out of the military, we can get a divorce and it's no skin off my back. We're looking at marriage as the contract. And that's why we call it like a contract marriage, because it's your contract in the military and then you're getting married. So we call it a contract marriage in the military. We're like, oh, they're in a contract marriage. Like they married their best friend and one of their best friends in high school.
What is up, everybody? My name is Kyle Matovcik. I am the host of the In Liberty and Health podcast, where we talk all things liberty, health, and wellness, and beyond. My hope is to encourage and spread the message of liberty and physical and mental well-being. I hope you enjoy all the topics we talk about with our guests. We're on all major streaming platforms, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Man, I'm doing as good as anyone can do getting buried by his 13-year-old son on leg day.
I'm not going to apologize for not being on this podcast because I got to go see Metallica. So if that's a problem, kiss my ass. Okay? All right.
All right, everybody, this is In Liberty and Health. Today with me, I have the gentleman from Biting the Bullet. I know one of them's Lacoud, apparently. I don't know about what type of Lacoud. We just recently started doing 5 Till Midnight, and I was always aware of these guys. I've listened to a couple of their podcasts and also heard our mutual friend Patrick McFarlane airing some of the episodes that you guys did together on his podcast and thought they were really cool. So I figured this was probably a long overdue thing. So how you guys doing?
I'm doing good. I'm still laughing at Lacoud right now, dude.
You just noticed that?
Yeah. I was like, wait, what?
I put it on last time we did 5 to midnight, but I forgot to change it.
Oh, didn't even notice. Notice.
Dude, it looks good there. So you guys had kind of, I don't want to say centered your podcast around your military service, but kind of came at the perspective of like, hey, we're libertarians who were in the military. So I see some people that I want to say almost make their entire personality around that, but I feel like you guys have found like a very happy balance with that.
Yeah. Originally it was so when we originally decided to do our podcast, it was like, we wanted to make it a, like we were in the smoke pit, because we'd always go into the smoke pit and bullshit, you know, while we're sitting there with our boys, getting drunk, smoking cigarettes, doing whatever hoodlum shit in the military. So, and it was always like funny conversations, and it was like always political and things like that. And so we wanted to make it like that, but kind of geared toward where we were going politically, which was more the anarchist route, which is kind of where we're at now. But we didn't want to be a vet bro, because Typo and I weren't even vet bros while we were in the military. We were just kind of like, we kind of hate the military. Like, this fucking sucks, and I don't believe in any of it anymore. And that's kind of how it was for me. And so I think we have played the happy medium, and we've kind of geared ourselves towards like the anti-military veteran bro podcasts, I guess, because I mean, one of my favorite things is when we get young men that hit us up on Instagram or something like that, and they're like, I was thinking about joining the military, and then I started listening to your podcast because I'm kind of in this space, and now I decided not to. And we're like, yes, fuck yeah. Like that's the best compliment for the show that I could get, or the suicide ones. But those are a lot less few and far between, where they're like, I was going to commit suicide, but now I feel like I got a group that I can hang out with and talk to, and I listen to your guys' show. Those ones are cool. But the young military aged male ones that are like, yeah, I was going to join the Marine Corps, and then I decided not to. I'm like, yes, that's awesome. Thank you. So that's kind of where I see it. What about you, Typo?
Yeah, the same thing. A lot of times on the other side, not so much like people that don't join the military, but we'll get guys that basically felt the same way about the military when they're in. They get out, and somehow through whatever, Instagram memes or Twitter or whatever, they end up finding our podcast and they're like, dude, that's exactly how it was when I was in. Like, you guys are explaining it and how I felt. And that's always like really reassuring because like how like the world treats or the United States treats veterans is like they always put them on like the same like stage, like all veterans are the same. When reality is like most veterans are just regular people. They're not like these heroes that everyone claims them out to be. They're just regular dudes doing a job. They just have a military uniform with it. And so they're not like these like guys that went and did like these crazy war fighting or anything like that. Like 90% of the military is just regular people. And I think like in a way we felt that niche for those guys because they get like all this praise or whatever for being like a hero, but then like really it just sucks being in the military and there's not like a lot of, I don't know. And a lot of people miss that because the one thing me and Luke always talk about this, the one thing we do miss was the people when we were in. Like the people were great. Like I don't know, it's just weird misfit kids that you all come together. You're all like poor, come from weird backgrounds, doesn't matter what like race or religion really, like you're all over the country and even other countries, funny enough. And but I don't know, it's just like it's cool to have a place to talk to people like that and get people that like think like we do, where they're like, man, the military sucks, like they lied to us, like that's not what we thought we were fighting for is not actually what we were fighting for. And finding guys that feel that way was really cool when we started the podcast.
Gotcha. Yeah. So one thing that I've kind of noticed that's a pattern amongst most vets I know, and it's probably because mostly I cluster around more like right wing and libertarian spheres, is that a lot of guys will almost be hesitant to like say, like they want people to thank them for their service, right? Like a lot of people are like, I don't do that to me because like I don't feel that way about it. Like a lot of people feel like they, like you guys do, like they kind of got fucked over. Do you think there's a large portion of people who go in the military and are like diehards, like, yeah, I can't wait to go do this and, murder people. And then even when they go through it, they still feel like they did the right thing? Or do you think more people kind of end up on the side of like, I think I got bullshitted into this?
I think a lot of people... You go ahead, Typo. You take it first.
I would say that a lot of people join with very open eyes and they kind of buy into the bullshit. Like even like right away, at least your first year or two, you kind of believe like you're in it for real. Like you think like what you're doing is to better your country. Like you really think you're gonna like go fight some terrorist or bad guy out there or help people. Like that's and sometimes that is true. There is some truth in that, but for a majority of people, that's just not true at all. And I think when people come toward the end of, even the guys that like they're straight up war heroes, like they killed like 10 terrorists, saved like a bunch of buddies, saved civilians. Even those guys that I've met, at least in my life, are not like, when someone thanks me, they don't even want people to thank them for their service. Like, I don't think a lot of people enjoy that. It's just kind of weird. And I think especially for guys that didn't do a whole lot, like deployments, because like most people don't even leave the United States, like never leave the United States their whole entire military career. They just stay on base, do training. And when like you literally are just being like paid to pretend fight and chill on base and go out on weekends and get drunk with your friends, then you don't really think like, why are you thanking me for my service? Like you have no idea what your tax dollars go to. Like you just have no clue.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people at the end of it don't like that type of mentality, at least my experience.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it's like Typo said. I think the numbers are like 85% of the United States military will never see, or I think it's actually like 90% of the United States military will never see combat. And then it's like 80% of that will never go outside the country. And which is crazy because we got all these military bases all around the world, right? And you think that it's just like the percentage wise, like there's going to be more people that are stationed inside the United States than are stationed outside the United States. And even less of those actually go and do any kind of deployments, whether it's, MUSE, which is like a Marine Expeditionary Unit or something like that. And then, so you're not doing a lot. Like Typo said, it's a job where you just have a military uniform on. And that's usually how a lot of us end up going. Like I got to do a lot of really cool shit just because I was working with EOD. So I got to travel even around the Pacific area, but or like the Pacific Islands. But even then, I never saw combat. I never did anything like that. And then most of my military career was what Typo said. I got drunk with my friends. I was locked down on a base for most of my career because I was in Okinawa, Japan. So I didn't do a whole lot. So it's like, don't thank me for my service because I really didn't do anything. And if you really jump into things, it's like, we shouldn't even be doing what we're doing in the first place. Like I did a lot of really stupid shit. we always tell this story about there's this helo dunker. It's called the helo dunker, and it's supposed to simulate helicopter crashes. And it's like a base metal helicopter, and you sit in it, and it crashes into a pool. And then you're supposed to, get out of it and do all this stuff. Well, Typo and I never did that training, not once. But me and Typo did the helo dunker a lot. We'd get up there at 3:00 in the morning, drunk as shit. We'd hop the fence, and we'd go climb on top of this thing and jump off into the pool at 3:00 in the morning, drunk as shit. So like that's what your tax dollars paid for. I got to live a little wild and get really drunk. I've fallen off that thing so many times. And, but that's, so then it's like, Veterans Day is coming up. Perfect time to do this podcast. Veterans Day is coming up this week. And by the time you hear it, it's already happened, or it's on the 10th. So you'll hear it the day before.
It'll be the Marine Corps birthday.
But yeah, Marine Corps birthday.
Oh yeah, and
so
all the guys can't wait to go out and say, like, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like a buddy of mine in college, who's probably one of my best friends, actually went to his house down in Kentucky. I remember him saying that there were so many Marines that would be like, I don't celebrate my birthday. I only celebrate the Marine Corps' birthday.
Yeah, they do. It's crazy. It's crazy. People will still celebrate it like, 15 years removed from the military, 20 years removed from the military. And, a lot of Typo and I talk about this too, where a lot of the older generation, like his dad or my parents' generation, which is kind of like an in-between generation between his parents and like us, they had a different military experience. It was a lot different than what Typo and I came up in the military. I joined in 2012 and was out in 2016, and Typo was 2012 to 2017. So we had a lot different experience than a lot of those guys. And even the 2001ers, the guys that were in when everything went down in after September 11th, they had a much different experience than we did. So some of them they just look at it differently, and there's different justifications for things that they did. But even going back to like why if more people get out, or when they get out, if they feel a certain type of way about it, I think there's another crazy number where it's like 85% of the people only do their first contract. Like they do their first 4 years and then they get out of the military. And that's like, if you had a workforce if you had a young workforce at your business, and it was 18 to 22-year-old males, and they only did one contract with your company, and then 85% of them left,
you call it that company.
That would look very bad on your business model. You know what I mean? And so I think that's very telling for how most people feel about the military while they're in it, and then when they get out.
Yeah. So one thing that I think I heard you guys explain, and you kind of just laid out here, is that kind of like the boomers and the Gen Xers had a very, very different experience from us. And the way that I could relate this personally for like my life and what I do would be like, as a mechanic, the people who are, let's say 20, maybe 40 years older than me, they got to kind of see cars when they were very simple. And then they got to see the technology grow and grow and grow. And back then you had a lot more like a customer base and people more informed of their vehicles. They were able to work on their vehicles, and they cared for their vehicles a little bit more. And they also got to see like the rise of the economy, where they got to benefit from like a lot of the earlier on inflation, and just kind of I don't want to say like industrial revolution, but technology was rapidly advancing. So they got to grow up with this and learn that, where like for us, pretty much, we kind of get like the tail end of this. And it sounds like you guys in the military had a similar deal where you're kind of like just busy doing bullshit, because now we have so many luxuries that like we don't have to, send people off to go kill people in another country nearly as much, because we have drone technologies, or like, I don't do tune-ups or tranny flushes nearly as much because all the parts are designed so much better and things are meant to be a lot better. So like our parents and our parents' parents generally got like almost like a greater, like they've seen a lot more lows and then higher highs because they got to kind of adapt to the technology as it came out. Whereas like we're kind of like in this weird limbo where things are kind of like stagnating because of the economy and because we're so much in debt. We're just trying to keep people busy and keep the bubble from popping.
That's what it feels like. It feels like we're just trying to keep people busy. Like that's what, like even my job now, like it's a technical job.
Yeah.
I do fire alarm and sprinkler inspections for like commercial businesses. But I mean, it's kind of mundane. Like I have a little bit of, I got to figure things out on the job and figure out how to do certain things. But for the most part, it's, oh, this is doing what it's supposed to. Oh, this is doing what it's supposed to. Here's your report at the end saying that all these things do what they're supposed to. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's what, and I mean, you get paid well doing it. And it's not as backbreaking as like actually doing repairs on like sprinkler systems or, refitting pipes or being a pipe fitter. Pipe fitters make a shit ton of money, but it's very demanding on your body. And so like and all the other jobs that I've done since I've been out of the military, same thing. And it's just like, you just do a bunch of busy work and they're justifying you being there as a human being because of the busy work that they can get you to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Typo, you're a welder, so I'm guessing you might have something similar, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong because I feel like welding remains pretty consistent, but you would probably have a better insight.
I would say I'm still relatively new to welding. I've only been doing it for a little over a year now, but
Gotcha.
At least for like right now, I just do production welding. So it's just making, like for example, all I make is like playground equipment, and like so it's just mass producing like benches or like tables, grills, like this. One of the company I work for, like pretty much all the public parks you see. We probably made something in that park. Like it's that big of a company. And so yeah, it's a lot of the repetition, make the same thing over and over. But what I see for like other job opportunities and other welders that I've talked to is it's a lot of like trying to maintain older equipment that like, for example, there's I live close to like a bunch of barge companies because I live really close to the Mississippi River.
Sure.
And they're not like making new barges. They're just keeping these old ass barges that's been on ship forever. So like they have these, like basically they just hire, instead of trying to invest in a new entire new barge, they just hire more welders to maintain this barge and try to keep it going, And it's just, I mean, I don't know if that'll ever come to like, oh, we got to get a new one eventually, but like that's what it seems like right now, at least. What I'm seeing is a lot of jobs for welders. It's like it's just maintaining stuff, trying to make stuff that's broken, needs to be replaced, and you find a way to keep it going. And I don't know how that'll work. But to correlate that with like the military, like there was a big transition that happened after World War II. Because before World War II, we didn't have like a standing military like the way we do now. Like back then, before World War II, it was like you raise an army and then you send them to fight. And then when the fighting's done, you disband most of that, like 90% of that army, and have just a small crew to maintain like for border security, right? Well, after World War II, that's when we expanded. And I think this is where like things are very different from like our grandparents, the ones that were in like World War II. Because like they joined and they were like fighting. Like you're fighting, you're gone, you're overseas, you're gone forever. But ever since after that, it's just like this. It transitioned the military into like a jobs program almost, where you're just like maintaining these bases, and it's maintenance, supply, admin, like all these like different things that just keeps the system in place. That's all it really does. And I think that it's like a reflection of like they're not really developing or creating better techniques or better technology in a lot of sense. Like they are for like, so they don't have to like send people to die, you know, like they can just send drones, like you said.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the same thing where it's not like they're downsizing. They're just like massively replacing the people just so they can put them in these bases. Say we can have like all these troops here, but they're not really doing anything. You know, it's really weird. It's really weird.
Gotcha. Yeah. So one thing that I'm guessing you guys probably also learned or kind of like went through when you were in the military is like people always say something about like a man's right to passage or kind of like right into adulthood. I feel like the military probably is that for some people. And it's kind of why like even when I was in my late teen years, I kind of wanted to join the military because I was always like a very, very disciplined person, always got up at the same time every day, always knew that like I had to go work out so that way I could be in my best health. And like the things that I wanted to do, I was going to do no matter what. Like there was no pulling me away from what I'm going to do. And I'm still that way to this day. I feel like people like me, and I'm guessing you guys probably aren't much different, feel like they want to go into the military because they may be like very conscientious or very orderly, and they feel like this is like an environment where they would thrive in. Does that resonate with you guys, or do you think differently?
That's a tough question.
Luke's grinning, so
that's tough. Well, I would say it's just tough because okay. I would say that me and Luke were the more orderly ones. And I wouldn't say we were as orderly as as maybe we are now, but we were young kids, so we were still like pretty disorganized.
Sure.
But I will say that and I think Luke can say the same thing. When I joined, dude, I thought like I was going to be the bottom of the barrel. Like I'm a weak bitch, basically. I thought I was like, I gotta like, I'm only 5'8". I'm a little dude, so I'm thinking like, God damn, dude, I gotta like really show people that I can be one of them. Like I'm because you see like maybe I bought into the propaganda a little bit, but like I see like movies and like the pictures they promote, and it's just these tall jack Marines. Dude,
you see you hear the Godsmack playing in the commercials. You're like,
yeah, like these are the warriors of our society. So I'm thinking like, dude, this is gonna be hard. I'm not gonna make it. Like I was really scared. I was honestly worried that I was not gonna make the cut.
Yeah.
And then you get to boot camp, dude, and that is not true at all. Like most of these people are nerds. They're not like healthy. They're people that they're actually joining the military. I find that like maybe not all, but I would say just roughly 50% of the people that joined were not very like they were like losers in high school. Like our standard, what a loser you would consider someone in high school. And they joined to get a reputation for themselves.
Gotcha. Yeah, they wanted to kind of have that as they wanted that as like a form of status. Like, look, I accomplished this.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Because there was, if you played like any sport in high school, the physical training of boot camp is not that hard. It pushes you. Don't get me wrong, pushes you, but it's not like you won't make it. Like honestly, like I was like top physical condition compared to everyone else in my boot camp. But I played football in high school all 4 years. Right. So like it was weird. And then there would be guys that were like seriously unfit, like having trouble running like a mile. And I was like, oh my God, dude, this is not what I thought it would be like at all. Like I thought these guys would be monsters. And the whole program is designed to take someone that is disorganized, that is unathletic, that is not orderly. And then at the end of it, make them to the level that they want them to be, and
kind of pound them into submission.
Yeah, and so I would say it's probably half and half.
Get them into a mold.
You get like the orderly guys that think that the military is for me, but you also get the guys that like they're just lost. They have no sense of direction, and they join the military to find that direction.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. And Luke, I'll give it back to you in 1 second. But like one thing that I've been trying to impress upon people is that like you're going to have a group of retards no matter what. Like there are some people that are just going to fuck everything up no matter what you do with them. And like you guys have talked about the manosphere recently, and I obviously do a podcast where we talk a lot about that kind of sphere. But like they always ask like, oh, well, what about these group of guys who just hate women? I'm like, those guys did not need anybody's permission to be fucking assholes. They didn't need the manosphere's permission. They were going to fuck everything up no matter what you did with them. So it sounds like maybe in the military, at least from you guys' experience, maybe that 50% of people are those people that just were so fucked up that they wanted something to maybe get their asses in gear.
Yeah. My experience, or what I would say is, I think I think 95% of the people, at least when we were joining, that were trying to join the military, they were joining to be a part of something. Even for me, like, I think, I played sports all the way through high school.
Yeah.
I love that I played sports I played organized sports since I was like 4 years old. And I played at higher levels since I was 10, whether it was football or basketball. Like I played in like club teams that traveled, and like it was a goal to win, get people to see you so you could, further your sports career kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
So like it was, doing those things, first you get in really good shape because you have to be. And second, you learn how to push through things because you have to, you know what I mean?
Right.
But while you do that, there's a lot of other guys that are on your team that are, pushing through things with you, and
hyper
it
competitive
becomes like you're among a lot of hyper competitive individuals. And so when I was looking at joining the military, I was like, I'm not joining any other branch but the Marine Corps, because I was like, they're the hardest branch. Like everybody tells me it's the hardest branch, and they got to do the hardest things, and they're the craziest. So I was like, that's where I'm going to go. And so I wanted to be a part of a brotherhood or something like that with a lot of hyper competitive individuals, and just one of those types of things. So that's why I joined. And then I learned the same thing that Typo did, that I was in the top 5% of my unit that was at boot camp together. Like it was easy. I had more leadership skills than 90% of the people there. I could speak in front of groups, like things that you would expect of the individuals that would go and join the most elite fighting force that we've ever seen in the world, is like how they're portrayed. They just didn't have those skills. And what they do is put you into a cookie cutter model, and they pound the sides off the people that do have those skills that are higher than everybody else. And then they form the people that don't have those skills into this little mold. And what I learned in the military, especially early on, was like, all right, I just got to downplay some of the things that I can do. Like I gotta bullshit a little bit so I can fit into this mold, so I don't get, pounded on, because I got pounded on a lot. And because I'm just a guy that questions shit. Like I always have. I have like, maybe it's like a psychological thing where I'm just like a question of authority always, my entire life. Why am I doing this? Why is it like this? Like, it's just who I am. And so I had to learn in the military to like suppress that a little bit to get where I wanted to go. And I had a count in boot camp, like, all right, I have this many days left of boot camp, and I have this many days left in the entire Marine Corps. Cause I was like, I'm ready to get out. Like by the time I was like 2 months into boot camp. So, it was just one of those things. Yeah. Cause I just realized like, oh, it's not a place for, hyper successful individuals. There's a lot of hyper successful individuals that come out of the military. There's a shit, especially out of the Marine Corps. You look at Fortune 500 companies, there is like a weird disposition of, or not disposition, but there's a weird display of like Marine Corps, former Marines that are like at the CEOs of a lot of Fortune 500 companies. Like it's a very skewed for how many people that are actually Marines. But I had this one guy, and his name was Wesley. He fucking followed me around the Marine Corps. He was a radio operator. So I met him in radio operating school, and he was my roommate. He was this weird little Mormon kid from Utah, just like a little troll. Like that's what he reminded me of like a troll. He couldn't run very well. He looked weird. He smelled weird. He wouldn't take shower. He was a weird kid, And this dude followed me around the Marine Corps. He went to my first unit with me. He went to my second unit with me. He followed me into an individual. It just sucked. I hated this kid because he was everything that I thought the military wouldn't be. And he was at the same level as I was. He even got promoted before me because he was in just a little bit longer than me. And I was just like, it doesn't make sense. I almost got in trouble early on in my Marine Corps career because we had a field op and in our comm school. And it was like 2 or 3 days. It's like a small field op, but you don't shower the whole time. You know, you take like baby wipe showers and shit like that. And so we did this field op, and then we got back, and everybody was like, all right, shower. This kid laid in his rack, like his bed, right afterwards, and then wasn't going to shower until the next morning. And so I locked him in the bathroom, and I was like, no, you're going to fucking shower. Cause I don't want to, I slept above him, and I was like, I don't want to smell you all night. Like, I don't like, it's unhealthy, and it's unhealthy for me, for you to be this unhealthy. So I locked him in the bathroom, and I almost got in trouble for locking him in the bathroom because it was like hazing or something like that. And I was like, this dude's not showering, bro. And then they kind of like let it go because they were like, yeah, he smells really bad. And so it was just a wild thing. But this guy literally got the same military career as I did. I was better than him on all accounts, whether it was intelligence or doing what I was supposed to. The only thing I did worse was I questioned a lot of shit. But still, it's just like if those people can get in the military, that's what really disenfranchised me, was like, if those people can succeed in the military, and those a lot of times are the people that stay in. He ended up getting out right when I got out too, but a lot of those people stay in because it's the only time they felt a part of something, and so they stay in. And as long as you stay in, you'll get promoted. Like, that's kind of how it is. If you can do the bare minimum and stay in.
Didn't he say one time, like, why did he say he joined the Marine Corps?
So he said he joined the Marine Corps so he would stop getting made fun of. Yeah. He was like, I got made fun of a lot in high school, and I didn't want to get made fun of anymore. So I joined the Marine Corps because I thought if I joined, I wouldn't get made fun of. So then he just got made fun of inside of the Marine Corps, like all the time. Yeah. And he got locked in a fucking bathroom and made to shower.
Yeah, I think what you were laying out there kind of reminds me of one work lesson I learned pretty early on, is that sometimes you do have to just keep your head down. And it was kind of what my dad told me that really kind of sealed this for me. He said, sometimes you just have to go in, you punch the clock, you don't go above and beyond, and you just punch out and you call it a day. Like, because sometimes if you give them an inch, they're going to expect a mile, and then they're just going to keep wanting more and more. And sometimes you just, like you said, keep your head down, do what you're going to do. Don't go above and beyond, because that shit will get abused right the fuck away.
Yeah. It does in the civilian world too.
Dude, that's one thing that was very frustrating about the military, is the incentives are all thrown off, because they don't want someone that, like, if you're a leader, and this makes sense from a leader's perspective, you don't want some asshole like, I'm running the show, this is how things go, this is how we've always done it. And then you got some asshole like Luke being like, why are we doing it this way? What's going on? Like, this is retarded. So it's very frustrating. And I can understand from that perspective. But when you're like one of the dudes actually doing the work, it's like the most infuriating thing. You're like, why are we doing it this way? Like, this makes no sense at all. And the best way I've heard it explained was actually a meme of all places. And it's like everyone is eating, like, you're in a room of like 500 people, and you're eating like super cereal, and everyone's using a fork. And you're this one guy that's like, why don't we use a spoon? And then everyone starts yelling at you, like, why are you bringing that up? Like, you are like, and they just start freaking out. Your leadership's like getting pissed that you're even bringing this up at all. Your coworkers are mad at you because you brought it up. So now they get mass punished because you even brought that up. So then they start getting mad at you for you like being logical. And it's the most infuriating like system there is. And instead of it being like the people that know their job and can do the like whatever, like you give them a task and they can just handle it and take care of it. It's all about who follows orders the best. If you don't give your leadership any problems, if you just follow orders and just go along and get along, you're going to move up very quick in the military. But if you try to step out of line a little bit, point out hypocrisies or anything like that, or try to run a better system without like the proper authority, then it's going to be a hard time for you. And I think that, at least for the people that are a little bit more intelligent in the Marine Corps, it's very, or military in general, it's very infuriating. You just don't understand. And there's no way you can convey that. Like what we would say all the time is like, this is just retarded. Like, we're all like, we're in the Marine Corps, so we're not like the best with words and reading. And so all we know what this is, like, this makes no sense. This is retarded. And that's all we know how to convey at the time. And we don't know how to fix it. And everyone just wants to get out.
All right, guys, we are going to take a quick break from the show to tell you about the show's sponsor. We are now brought to you by Fox & Sons Coffees. You can see right here, I got the Den Blend Dark. Really enjoy that. I've been drinking a lot of their Brazil honey prep right here. As you can hear, there's not a lot of beans left in it because I've been drinking it quite a bit. Just tell you a little bit about Fox & Sons, why I support them and why you should too, is that Stephen had started the company up in Michigan to help teach his son about entrepreneurship. I'm all about that, and I do firmly believe that in order to spread liberty in our lifetimes, we have to support those who support similar values as us. And Stephen does support all the same libertarian values that I bring and talk about on the show a lot. So go to foxandsons.com, use code Kyle at checkout to get 15% off of orders $25 or more, and there's always free shipping whenever you place an order that is more than $37.99. Find their coffee absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure you will too. So one more time, go to foxandsons.com, use code Kyle at checkout to get yourself a little discount. Let them know I sent you, and support the coffee that supports you. All right, guys, thanks. Back to the show.
Yeah. I think the best way I heard it was our third co-host when we originally started our show, Jared. He would say it's like working in the DMV your whole life. Like it's like that's what it feels like. You're like, we're all just waiting for nothing. You're in a bright, very sterilized room with a whole bunch of other people that don't understand what's going on because none of it makes sense. They got 6 different types of numbers that they're called, and they're never in the right order. You got like C129 going, and then A2 is next, and you're like, I'm fucking Z62, and you're like, I haven't even seen Z pop up on the screen yet. And then you talk to the workers, and they're like, actually, you have to go to that one. And you're like, then why did you call me? Like, that's how it feels constantly. Like, it's just like, none of it makes sense, and it feels disordered. Like, to us, it feels disordered because there's like a clear path between A and B, right? And they make you take A, C, F to get to B. And even though you got to B eventually, what they really wanted you to do was get to D. And you were just like, what? But you didn't even tell me that in the first place. Right. Why? And they're like, why are you asking why? It's like the monkey, that monkey experiment with the bananas where they beat the shit out of all the monkeys if one monkey would get the banana. And as they finally started slowly switching out the monkeys, like the monkeys would beat the new monkey that got the banana, and then no monkeys would ever go after the banana after they subbed all of them out. And it's just like that, because then they get everybody else around you that's the same as you. They get them in trouble when you do something that's out of order of their order, and then everybody pounds on you, and you're just like, you know, this is retarded. And they're like, I know it's retarded, but we're going to do it anyways. And, you know, once I got into a leadership position, I got into a leadership position pretty early in my career for what my rank was. And I had a staff NCO, like a lead supervisor or a lead manager of like my platoon. He wasn't very bright, and everybody knew he wasn't very bright. He knew he wasn't very bright. He would go to me for everything. And but he was cool about it. But then when he did something wrong, he would blame it on everybody else. And I was just like, you're a fucking dumbass. So one time they lost a radio or something on some place that they were at, and we had to do this whole inspection to try and find this radio. And then I came to find out that he had actually dropped it over the ship while they were out, because he had it and he'd somehow dropped it overboard. So it's in the middle of the ocean. They knew that before they came. And I found out while we were doing this inspection, and they were yelling at me like, where's this radio? Where's this radio? And I found out while I was doing that he had dropped it overboard. And I was like, okay, why am I doing this inspection? And they're like, you're going to do the inspection and find that radio. And I was like, you just told me that he dropped it overboard and we don't have this radio anymore. So why would I do a whole gear layout? So I had to go to my Marines, and there's like 15 of them, 20 of them, or there was probably like 15 at that time. And we were sitting there, and I was like, it's 11:30 at night on a Wednesday or something. We have to be back in at 5 a.m. the next day. We're cleaning gear. We're doing all the shit. And I'm like, we got to do this gear layout. And they're like, what the fuck? And I was one that kind of like got shit out of the way. Like, I try to take care of them as much as possible. And they're like, why? And I was like, because it's the fucking Marine Corps and we're retarded. so we're gonna do it anyways. and they're just like, okay, like, but that was the difference, I think, between my leadership style and then a lot of theirs, is because most guys would go in there and be like, because I fucking told you so, and you're gonna do it. And I was just like, because we're fucking dumb, so we're gonna do it, and then we're gonna go home. And if we do it fast, then we go home quicker. But we're just gonna have to deal with it. It's the worst. I fucking hated the military.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. I occasionally get to be a dispatcher for my shop now, and I think we talked about this a little bit on 5 Till Midnight, but like being the lead guy is always kind of weird, because like I'm responsible to make sure that like everybody's moving along and everybody's got work and everybody's happy. So now I kind of get to see the repair orders before they get handed to anybody else. And sometimes you see like this customer has like a 900-mile car, and they're complaining about like a rattle or a smell or something like that. It's like, okay, it's a brand new fucking car. You know, this is a bullshit complaint. Just fucking look at it. Make them feel good. Type out some long ass story about how you documented everything, and you look for bulletins through GM, and you tried to find something for them. But guess what? You couldn't find fucking anything, and their car's perfectly fine. Customer to drive and advise. We now just, wasted a half hour looking for a complaint that the service advisor probably should have just said like, hey, I think you're full of shit. You're just pissed off because you got a fucking car payment. That's all it is.
Yeah,
that would suck.
Yeah, I see stuff like that at my job where, well, like I might be similar. I'm sure I know it's like this for Luke, but you'll have like, so people that actually like on the like floor, the production line, they're actually working. And there's people that sit in their office. And the people in the office get paid to like come up with like dumbass ideas that if they would just come over and ask the guys on the floor, they'd be like, no, that would not work at all. That would just makes no sense.
And then they never ask you about that.
And they never ask, and they start implementing like a new method of doing something. And like already before they even set it up, like all the guys are like, okay, well, like this, and like start listing off all the things like why we can't do this, why it's a safety hazard, why it makes no sense for reduction. And we do it for like a week. Then they realize it was dumb. They scrap it, and we just don't bring it up ever again. It's like, why do we do this, dude? It makes no sense.
Yeah, I think it's like a byproduct of having like beam counters everywhere. And I'm guessing both of you guys probably deal with this in your jobs, or like, and I've even seen this at like change since I started working as a tech 10 years ago. When I first got in, I had a service manager that was a tech for a while, and he was a service manager for like 20 years. He just retired probably like 5 or 6 years ago. So I knew him for quite a while. My dad had worked for him, but he knew the business, right? Because he was an advisor, tech, and everything, knew the business inside and out. And then like, as I got further and further into my career, those kind of people disappeared. And then we were all of a sudden hiring people that were like, oh, he was an enterprise manager, so he could work in a service dealership. Like, why not? This guy was a banker, or, he was a service advisor for a Mac dealer. So let's point him, ahead of Buick GMC Cadillac. He has no idea what he's doing.
Yes.
But though, what do you hear? You hear about production and numbers and stuff, but though they never like say, hey, you guys are the ones doing all this work. Let's have a conversation about how this could work for everybody involved. It's always, no, we have this plan of how it should work, and you guys are just going to do it because we're telling you.
Yeah, dude, it's the worst. Like when I first got hired at my job, the guy that hired me, the service manager that I had, was a prior tech. He had been in the field for multiple years, and the guy higher than him, the operations manager, he was a prior tech and had been in the field for multiple years. And then I've been there for a little over 4 years now, and we got a new GM and we got a new operations manager because they moved on to better things. Like they were really good at their job. They were prior techs. They knew what they were doing. And as soon as they left, they're like, all right, we're moving towards, this is where we want our business to go. And we're like trying to build a bigger business, right? That's their goal, is to build a bigger business for the fire safety side of the company. And so they start bringing in people that have never been inside the industry, but have a proven track record of building businesses. Whether it's, I have an enterprise manager now, not like my service manager, but he's in our office from enterprise. And
that's hilarious.
He's in charge of fire and life safety. And I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, you don't know anything. And they've honestly, like, and they started hiring like guys from Big Lots and guys from this industry, but nothing to do with fire, like what we do, fire safety. And they've made it horrible. They've made it like a horrible place to work. They've made it, a very toxic environment. None of the techs want to be inside the office whatsoever. And that's because it's just like we walk in there and we're like, what are you guys doing? Like, we don't have the stuff that we need. And when we come in and we're looking at what you guys are doing, you guys aren't doing anything.
All right.
So it's so frustrating. But I think a lot of businesses are moving to that now. A lot of businesses aren't. And the worst part is when corporations, they're like, we like to hire from within side. We like to hire from within side. And every time a new hire billet comes up, and there's a lot of guys from inside or girls from inside that want to go to that billet because they've been in the industry for a while and they're ready to take the next step in their career, they hire some outside person that has never done anything like it. Right. And they're like, he or she was just the best for the job. And it was like, how? You have to train them for 6 months to even have a basic understanding of what they're about to do. And then after that, they still don't know anything. So it's like, what are we doing here? And it makes no sense. And the environment of work just gets worse and worse. And honestly, as on the tech side, our production gets worse, and our morale gets worse. And I think it's just like where we're at as like the economy is at. Like they're more worried about penny pinching and making numbers and considering growth than actually providing a top tier product to their customers.
Right. Yeah, Typo. I'm guessing it may be similar in welding, but
I would say, yeah. So, like, for example, the place that I work, so we had a floor supervisor, and he basically like manages like the welding side and also the fabrication side. Mm-hmm. And when he was only there for like a couple weeks, but he got like a job somewhere else at a higher billet or whatever. So, and this guy came from this company, like he hired on as like the lowest level guy, worked his way up to where he was. And he was there for like 10 or 12 years. Mm-hmm. And when the job opened up, everyone assumed that like a couple guys that's been there a while were going to get the job because they know everything. They know how everything works. Mm-hmm. Well, it ended up, they gave it to like some 24-year-old guy with an engineer degree, never worked on a production line at all. And it's it's been just I've worked, this is the guy that's been my boss the entire time. So like, I don't exactly know how everything worked with the guy before, but pretty much everyone that's been there longer than me are always telling me like, this guy doesn't know shit. The last guy knew everything. They said the last guy was an asshole, but he was an asshole that fucking knew everything. So he had a right to be an asshole, you know, like you can't bullshit him. If he sniffs you're trying to bullshit him a little bit, like he's not going to take it. Where this guy, like I know all the time, like I've heard guys like he'll come up and question like, hey, is there a way we can make it better or whatever? And like these guys, it'll be like some like younger guys that like they don't even really know what they're talking about. But the guy's like, wow, that's really good insight. I never thought about it. And like, it makes no sense. He just told you bullshit, but you don't know because you've never worked this before. So you can't even know like who to go to, who's right, who's wrong. And it's really weird because so my job, they hire a lot of like engineer interns that are in school. And those guys, like I like those guys because they always take the initiative to come over to like our section and they'll ask us like, hey, how can we make your section better? How can we make the production line better? They're actually like coming to us, but then like they write down all these ideas, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. Maybe something's going to be different. And then we come back and that's when they come over like this dumb idea and we're like, where does this idea come from? Like the guy in the office, and we're like, why are we doing this? And then both of them are like, we don't know, man. We just got told to help you guys set it up. And I'm like, so why'd you guys take all the damn notes and ask us all these questions if you're just going to do something that makes no goddamn sense? Like it's very infuriating. And what's really changed in my job the last year though, is I don't know if a company is like mine or somewhere along the line got like really hit with like OSHA laws or OSHA's really coming down on companies lately, but they have really emphasized like safety to a level where it's like getting ridiculous. And it's pretty annoying what it is. And the people that are enforcing this are the HR ladies. And that is the most infuriating position I have ever worked with.
HR is the worst.
I honestly think HR
job.
should not exist. Like HR is so annoying. I feel like they hire the worst women. It's always women. They always hire the worst women for these jobs. And
it's like the atypical Karens.
Yes, it's like Karens, dude. And they come and they just have this like snooty attitude to them. Like, I don't know, like they like almost talk to you like you're a fucking retard, and it pisses me off. Like
because they have their bullshit business communications degree, and it's like,
and it's like it's not even necessarily what they're saying, it's just their tone, how they say it.
How they're saying
that, and it's just like, oh, you just get under my skin, you fucking braggedy bitch. Like I don't know. Like, these HR, dude, I hate HR. Everywhere I've worked, I fucking could not stand HR. They're
never liked a single HR person. Dude. Yes.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Like, HR was a position that came in, and it was like, it's like the unions. Like, they had a purpose at one point in time, but they've served their purpose. You know, like now it's like a
outlive their usefulness.
Yeah. So that's what HR was. Like, it had a purpose. I think it still has a purpose, but companies figured out how to make less about how to help the worker and how to help the company, and so they hire HR people that will help the company, not help the worker. And it's like, oh, so now it's outlived its usefulness, like you said. Like there hasn't been a single HR person in any of the companies that I've worked for that I was like, oh, I can go to them and tell them, you know, like, this is getting messed up and it's really bothering me, and I need you to help me like make it better. Or, hey, I didn't get my pay the right way. And they're like, well, it always turns back on you. It's like, well, did you do this, that, or the other? And it's like, no, I didn't. And then they make you fill out a shit ton of paperwork to try to explain what happened. And you're like, I don't know what happened. I just didn't get my pay's not correct. Like, what do you mean? I got to fill out an inquiry and fucking, you got to search 7 queries on your fucking side. And I don't know. It's just, it's a bullshit position in my opinion. And I can't stand a single HR person I've ever met in my lifetime at this point in time.
Yeah, come to think of it, it's kind of funny because, like, I think all the HR ladies I've ever worked with, the HR department in my work now is actually, like, they're really, really cool people. So I think I'm very, very lucky in that regards. But, like, all the other ones I've worked with were total cunts. But, it really seems like the economy now has changed over the last, like, I would even say 20 years, where, like, my stepdad, my dad, and like a whole bunch of people from like their generation, and both of them are probably like in their mid 50s. It seems like back then you could have got a job, let's say in the 90s, the 80s and shit like that. You got a job and you stayed there for a long time. You got good benefits, you got a retirement, and then you left. Nowadays, it seems like you have to keep kind of bouncing around to get a raise. And that's what I had to do. I'm sure, it seems like you guys relate to this, but like the last job I was at, I worked there for 4 years before I got a raise, right? And I had to threaten to quit. I told him, like, look, if I don't leave, or like, if you don't give me a raise, I am leaving. And then they finally give me a raise after 4 years. And it was $2 an hour, which, like, after 4 years, you think I would have got something year over year. And then about 2.5 years after that, I finally left and went somewhere else. I got another $2 an hour. And then at this place, I'm very, very lucky that I feel, have at least kept up to par with like raises and stuff like that. But like, for the most part, it doesn't seem like loyalty to a job really pays anymore. And it sounds shitty, but like, it's fucking cutthroat out there, and you have to play the game. That's what I tell people all the time. Like, you have to be very Machiavellian in the way that you deal with your boss and your workplace. Like, be friendly, be good to everybody, be charming, so that way people like you and you're a pleasant person to work with. But don't be afraid to fucking drop the bomb and tell them, like, look, I am the fuck out of here if you don't treat me a little bit better, or if I don't get a raise like I feel I'm entitled to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, dude.
No, you're.
I'll just say really quick that I noticed that in my job, because there's this huge like gap where there's guys, older guys that have been there since that company like started. They were there from the ground up, and they But there's probably only like 4 or 5 of those guys, and they're like our best welders.
Yeah.
Some of them are.
They've been there for like
supervisors.
20 or 40 years.
Yeah. This is their job. They're retiring after this job. There's not doing anything else. Like this is it.
Yeah.
But then there's no one like climbing the ladder behind them, right? So what happens is like the next guy down that's like been there like longer. It's only been there like 6 years or 5 years.
Yes.
And so what happens is people work at like my company specifically, and I know eventually this is probably going to happen to me, is they work there and then it's like, okay, man, I've been here. I have good times. I'm helping with the production line. I take on all these tasks. I know how to do all this stuff. I'm looking for a raise, and I know it's probably not going to come in the way that I want it to come. And guys leave. They go to another place. They find another job or a position that they see, and like the turnover rate at my job is insane, dude. Like it's probably I started there a little over a year ago, and I would say well over half the crew is not the same people that I started with, which is it's insane. And that's all I wanted to say. But I think you're right, dude, because I think it's very cutthroat even for workers. Like people say they want that loyalty, but there's just not companies rewarding.
They don't care.
There's no incentive for that loyalty. Yeah. Last job I was at, it was the same deal. We had I would say before I started there in 2016. Yeah, 2016, right before I started there. And like when I would say probably like the 2 years before I started there and up to like maybe a year, 2 years after I started there, I think they said they cycled through like 30 service advisors in the matter of like a couple years.
That's insane.
So sorry. Yeah. Now, Luke, I'm sorry to cut you off, but yeah, go ahead.
No, you're fine. But no, that's insane. I see it the same way where, I mean, if you look at most career planners, like guys that do, people that do that as a living, they recommend on your resumes and how your resume should be set up, like those kinds of people. Yeah. Them and what they say when you're like, you don't feel fulfilled in your career or something, and look for a person that's like, hey, we help you plan out your career. They tell you every 3 years, update your resume, put it out on the market and see what you get, because you should be seeing as long as you're adding to your resume over those time periods, you should be getting a significant raise. And then they say that you'll get it at a different company, because other companies are even with what you're saying, like it's like every 3 to 4 year thing. You should be floating your resume around to see what other people are hiring at. I mean, I've been doing it for the last year, to be honest, just to see where it's at compared, because like you said, I'm at that point where you were at your last company, where it's like we get our 3% increase or whatever. And we also have guys like Typo where they've been in the industry for 20 plus years or 18 years, 19 years. And then there's a giant gap, and the next closest person is me with 5 years. And it's like, and then everybody else below that is year to 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
They don't have. Yeah, I was just gonna say they don't have like the guys to keep it going after they leave. And next one is 1 year. Well, a year from now, one of the guys is retiring, and the top 4, they're going to be retired within 5. So it's like they don't have the guys. If they don't treat me correctly, they're going to have people with literally 0 experience for a lot longer.
Yeah, you're right. You're in. That's kind of cutting out a little bit there, but I think I got the general gist of what you were getting at there. Yeah, it's kind of amazing that you would think everybody kind of knows that like the blue collar workers or guys like us are pretty hard to come by, guys who show up every day, can pass a drug test, show up on time, show up consistently. You would think they'd be like, holy fuck, we should do everything we can to keep them. But sometimes it's almost like there's no graciousness. So like for me, I am pretty much like fully certified through General Motors. I have every single ounce of training that a lot of people, it would typically take them like 20 years to get, because when I was in college, I made sure I did as much as I could. And when I got out of college, I did as much as I could. And then now, like, there isn't much left. There's almost nothing for me to do in General Motors when it comes to like training to expand my resume in that regards. But like, you know, like you guys are saying, I keep my resume out there. I always take calls and shit like that, because you should always kind of keep yourself on your toes and make sure that you're ready to fucking bounce if, you know, on a moment's notice. And, you know, you kind of keep leverage on your workplace. But yeah, I mean, at my place, there's one dude who's been there for 30 years. The next guy's been there for 20 years. And then after him, like in our shop, there's a guy who's been there for like 4 or 5 years who doesn't really do the kind of work that I do. Like he's like an hourly kid that just kind of does his own thing. They give him some shit work, but he's good enough. And then there's me, who's kind of like one of the lead techs. And then the other guys are just kind of like getting in, and they're kind of settled. There's one other guy who's a flat rate guy who was trained there, and he left and came back twice, but I think he's staying now. But yeah, it's strange, because I even remember when I started at a dealership back in 2013, I remember there was like an age gap. So you had some guys that were my age, and then at the time there were a whole bunch of guys that were like older and had been there for a while, but a lot of those guys were going to retire. And then now like a whole new generation of the workforce has to come in. So you have like a whole bunch of like late 40s to 60s. You have like a handful of dudes in their 30s, maybe early 40s, and then very, very little guys who are like our age, you know, maybe 18 to like 28. And I think it's going to keep going that way. And, you know, for jobs like ours, I think they're just going to have to start saying like, hey, we're going to pay you insane amounts of money. You're going to get good benefits, because I don't think they have much of a choice at this point.
No, I do. I completely agree. Because I was looking at, I don't know for other positions, but I know welders, like it's like 40% of welders are going to retire in like 10 years. Like they're going to be at retirement age. And so there's going to be like 5-10 years. And I say this to people, like, because we got this question a lot. Like guys will be like, well, I wanted to join the military, but you guys are pushing me away from it. Like, what's a better option? And I always tell people, like, trades, man, like go into the trades, because, and like, there's a couple of reasons for that. Instead of like joining an organization and blowing up someone else's civilization, you could join an organization and like build your organization and society around you. Like that's what blue collar workers do. And, but just for a moral sense, but in reality, like just for like gain for yourself, like there's going to be a time where I think in the next 5, 10, 15 years where people like us are going to be in very high demand, because they just do not have the people coming in to replace it. And I think like, at least for my company, like right now, there's because like the job does pay more than minimum wage, right? So it's above minimum wage. It's like I'm making like somewhere like $25-ish an hour, right? But like when people start off, it's like 20, 21 around there. And
that's not bad to start, really.
No, not at all. But like it's such and so it's like a good way to like you can pull people in, but for some reason the company just doesn't retain people. Like there's like the atmosphere there, or maybe I don't know exactly everything, the reason why they can't keep people there, but so it's easy for them to replace people. They're just not replacing people with good quality people that will stay for the long run. And I think that's going to be a really big problem as the older guys in this industry start to retire, because then their whole workforce is going to be people they're just going to be swapping in and out. And that I just don't see that as a good function for your company. Like you want to be able to have guys that you retain, you keep there, and they can, you know, stay at the company a very long time, and then convince the younger guys like, hey, this is a really good company for me. They've treated me very well. Or that's just not happening anymore. And I think a lot of companies are like that, because I've done a couple interviews, and one of the first, I always have questions for them. They're like, oh, you got questions for me? And I always ask them questions. And the first thing I always ask them is, what is your turnover rate here? And they like all the places that
they're silent for a second.
They smile and they're like, well, we have a pretty high turnover rate. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, why is all these companies like that? And I don't know. I don't exactly like people always, this pisses me off. But people always make the argument that it's because our generation is like, they just don't want to work hard. They always put the blame on us. And you know what? I'll take a little bit of the blame,
Sure.
but you're the motherfuckers that raised us. So, okay.
Well, not only that, but like, I really don't think that's as true as people want it to be. Like, you see the most extreme examples, but like, I do think there's a lot of people our age who just realize like the monumental fuck that we inherited. Like, holy fuck, our country's so in debt. Interest rates completely kill your incentive to save. The dating market's so fucked up compared to what it used to be. And not that like, everything was always perfect, but like, just shit has changed so much. And we don't have the similar benefit, like I was saying a little bit earlier, of like growing up with these technologies. So we have to play catch up to a very, very advanced society and like a very, very advanced workplace. Whereas like the people before us didn't really have to do that. And I really think that we're trying to like figure out this post-marriage, a lot of the tradition parts of our culture and trying to figure out like how we manage that. And I don't think that anybody really knows what success in that regards looks like.
Yeah, in another sense is like we were all kind of lied to. Like if you went the military route, we were lied to. We were lied about the war, like what we were doing over there, the Middle East, all lied about that. And a lot of people more than us that went to college were lied to. Like they told, hey, you go to college, and when you're done with college, you're gonna have like a good, decent job that's going to be able to, get you a wife and buy a house and have a good family, get a good car and have a good job. And a lot of those people, when they got out of college, they ended up being like, it was just like 4 years of debauchery and sodomy and like just partying. And they came out with massive debt. And it turns out that your degree doesn't really help you as much as you thought it would. Now you're working like maybe you make a little bit over minimum wage, but it's nothing like you were promised. And so I think a lot of our generation just feels like they were completely screwed out of like what our parents got, where they bought a house back in like the 80s and then like sold it for like triple the price in like early 2000s. And that's just not like that's
not our reality.
That's not on the table for us anymore. And it's harder. It's much harder to people just to get a used car is insane. Now,
oh yeah, absolutely.
So crazy. Like I was just talking to people last night I was talking to this old guy, and he had this truck. He has this truck from, it's like a 1990s Ford F-150 he has, and he's had it forever. And he's like, I paid this much for it. And I was like, you paid that much? It was like, I can't remember what it was, but it was like really cheap. And I was like, do you know how much like that same truck would go for today? Like that truck right there, like
$50,000.
And it's kind of an antique, but at the same time, like just if it take a car from like the mid 2000s that you try to buy that probably has 100,000 miles on it. It's not the best, but it can get you from point A to point B, $7-8 grand. And you're like, Jesus Christ, dude, this is insane. Like how can people even like, start their life or a career? Like, I don't know. I think our generation's like, we got fucked. And it's hopefully like the next generation or maybe a couple generations later, we can set them up for a better opportunity. But we're the ones that's got to like figure everything out, figure out what the lies are, figure out what the actual best solution is. And hopefully we come out on top.
Yeah.
I feel like our generation is the generation that has to just like cut ties with, like we already know we're getting the shit end of the stick, so we just have to be like, it's like the Social Security thing where a lot of us would be like, let's just stop paying into it. Like give the rest of the people that have already had it, give them their money, like whatever, because they were expecting it, whatever. We know we're never going to get it. So let's just stop it now. Like, I feel like that's what our generation has to be, where it's like, it's all fucked. It's all bullshit. So we're going to stop it right now. And we're going to take the brunt of this bullshit. But at least my kids are going to be all right. At least my kids' kids are going to be all right, because we're not doing those same stupid patterns, And it's kind of like what Typo said, where a lot of it's been sold to us as bullshit. And I'm not one to be like, I saw somebody say, they're like, oh, the millennials, we always talk about how like we've had it the worst and whatever, like comparatively to everybody else. And somebody was like, yeah, try growing up in fucking 60s Russia or something like that. And it's like, you're right. Like we've been through 2 giant market crashes, and we're probably going into a third one. And, everything's bullshit. We're going into hyperinflation, and it's like, yeah, it's pretty bad. but comparatively, like we haven't had the worst than other
Right.
people in the last 100 years. So it's like, I get that. But at the same time, when we just look at from the United States, if you just take it from there, because that's what we experience and that's what we're going to be in, we're coming into one of the worst time periods that we've had since this country was founded, other than probably the Civil War and World War II. And World War I wasn't near as bad for us, but World War II was really bad for us. And it's like, you know, we're in, especially after World War I, 1920s, the Great Depression, shit like that. We haven't seen that kind of stuff in a long time in the United States. And we're coming into a period where very similar things are going to happen. And it's going to be very difficult for a lot of us. So if we could just, you know, have kind of like a stop loss where we know we're going to have it bad. So we're just going to take it, but we need to do it now. And that's kind of where I get anxious, because I'm like, every year that it goes on is one more year my kid is going to have to deal with it if I ever have a kid, you know? And it's like, I want it now. Like, I want us to stop doing this shit now. And it sucks because we can't just like stop it. But you know, it's just one of those things where you said, you brought up the dating market. It's all out of whack. The post-marriage thing, it's not so much scary to me. I've never been huge on marriage. I've finally found somebody that I actually want to marry. It's always one of those things that everybody's always talked about, or at least in our generation, where it's like, it's not beneficial to the man whatsoever nowadays.
Exactly.
And all right, so what do we do as, you know, these early 30s? Are we going to be the ones that are like, hey, actually, I think this tradition has value, and we're going to try and be the leadership or the pinnacles of that and return to that tradition? Or is it something that we need to pivot from? Absolutely.
All right, guys. I'm absolutely thrilled with the show's new sponsor. I am now sponsored and have an affiliate through LMNT electrolytes. I have used these electrolytes for years. Back when I used to do a lot of fasting, in fact, I used to drink, sometimes I want to say up to 7 a day, 7 little packets. So the packets are full of all the electrolytes you need to perform and hydrate yourself properly. You need sodium for pretty much every single function in your body, despite what a lot of people may tell you. Sodium doesn't actually cause a lot of the issues that people kind of would have you believe. So just real quick to give you a little bit of facts. You don't need sugar to hydrate. Electrolytes and water don't require glucose to pass through the gut. The average American consumes over 60 pounds of sugar a year. And when it comes to athletic performance, you can actually lose up to 7 grams per day in hot climate. So make sure you click on the affiliate link below to get all your hydration needs. And like I said, I'm super stoked to have these guys teamed up with the podcast, and just make sure you get your electrolytes through Element. All right, guys, thanks.
And as I've gotten older, especially in the last like 2 years, basically, I kind of think that it should be something that we don't pivot away from, and we do try to return it to a traditional value type thing where it's like, this is very important societally and structurally, that that's kind of how I see it. And I don't really give a shit about we have to making it tradition wise, like we have to make it only men and women or any of that. I don't really give a shit about that. I think we make it more about, it's not just a contract that the government makes us to sign. It's like a contract. It's not even really a contract. It's like the ultimate promise between two people to be together with for the rest of your lives. You know, like it's got to be something like that. Right. And I think that's how I see it. But even when it comes to post-marriage, the idea of what post-marriage is now, and then, you know, the way the economy looks and the lies that were sold, like it's just rough. We're in a weird spot. And that's kind of what Typo and I have talked about on our show a lot too, is like society and culture. Like, what is our culture now? Because I couldn't define our culture now. It's so split into so many different things that it's difficult to even put find the vein to prick the blood to understand what fucking type of culture it is. Because there's just so many right now. It's crazy.
Yeah. And the worst part is that, like, I don't really know a way out of it, because kind of to a point that we were talking about earlier about kind of bouncing around for jobs. I think a lot of people are kind of just doing the gig economy and figuring out how to make a buck without like officially sitting down for a 9 to 5 anymore, which like, okay, so that's good because some people have a little bit more freedom and flexibility, and maybe that's a little bit more of a comfortable lifestyle for those people. But at the same time, we don't have the same industrial base anymore, right? And then even at like a marriage point, when we talk about marriage, like you can't have the information age like we have now on Instagram and Tinder and all these dating apps and still expect to have like a completely traditional life where your wife never slept with anybody and you as a guy are like this hardcore blue collar guy who, you know, kills the buffalo and takes it home to your family. Like we live in a completely different age. So it's hard to really describe what marriage is now for a lot of people, because look at how many people just have like open marriages and shit like this. Or, you know, what's the incentive for a guy to get married? Like you were saying earlier, where like, if you split up, then as a guy, like, okay, your end of the marriage as a guy is enforceable by law. Like you have to pay alimony, you have to pay child support. For a lot of guys, that means like their life is destroyed. Somebody that was working with my last job, he was paying $2,000 a month, and he probably wasn't making much more than maybe like, I would say 40 to 60 grand a year. So like $2,000 a month, that is a sizable fucking chunk of his income. Now, if you're a dude in a marriage and your wife isn't having sex with you, or she's in law or something like that, what are you going to do? You're going to go take her to court so that way she starts fucking you again? Like, no, it doesn't work that way. So
become the stay-at-home dad so you can take her money.
Exactly. But, you know, for most guys, what the fuck's the incentive to get married? And I know one thing I also kind of want to get you guys' thoughts on was like the military and how it incentivized women. I think we talked about this a little bit, but like, I knew so many guys that just like as soon as they got in the military, they couldn't wait to chase women with a fucking stiffy and throw a ring on it so that way they could fucking take them to town and get married and get all the benefits. I think that's a very, very sick thing to put pressure on people through the military to get married. Like I think social norms and like maybe tax breaks to get people married is good, but I think like this idea that you get into the military where you're sent off to potentially die, and incentivizing those people to get married is a pretty bad thing, because you could end up with like a lot of widows and shit like that.
Yeah. So I'll just say this, and Typo, you might agree with me in this aspect. So I think originally it wasn't to incentivize marriage, because the general things that you do or the benefits that you get with marriage are things that you would it kind of makes sense. Like you should do those things, you know, because if you're a military man, you're in the military as a man and you get married to, you know, your significant other in the United States, what you would end up having to do is she would have to move out there with you. You'd have to find a house. So living on that, the money that you were getting living at bachelor inside the barracks, you generally can't, that doesn't work. You don't get paid the same amount of money. So now, because you're not paying for the barracks, they give you the money that they're paying for the barracks, your rent for the barracks. They're giving that money back to you. The food that you're get from the commissary, it all comes out of your check. It just doesn't come out in like very like orderly and itemized. But those things are kind of what you're paying for. So what they're doing is giving you back the money that you're paying towards all the amenities that you use inside the military. So like if you're single in the military, you're eating at the commissary, you're living at the barracks. So that's your rent and that's food rations money. So when you get married, you don't get those anymore because your wife can't live inside the barracks and she's moving out there with you because you're married. So you get that money back, which is like $1,600 in a lot of places, like an extra $1,600 a paycheck or something like that, because it gets taken out every 2 weeks. So that's another $3,200 a month that you get. So that's a big incentive. And that's usually the incentive that a lot of guys get contract marriages. I think the difference is so it's not like that would have always been a thing. That's always been a thing. I think what the difference is our society doesn't look at marriage the same way. So now people are like, oh, I'll just get married, and in a couple years
to get the bag.
We'll get the bag, and then once I'm out of the military, we can get a divorce, and it's no skin off my back. we're looking at marriage as the contract, and that's why we call it like a contract marriage, because it's your contract in the military and then you're getting married. So we call it a contract marriage in the military. We're like, oh, they're in a contract marriage. Like they married their best friend and one of their best friends in high school. And that's why. So I think that's what it is. I don't think it's necessarily that the military incentivizes getting married. They're giving you back the things that you should get if you did live by yourself or you did live with your significant other. But there's always been a very high marriage rate and a very high divorce rate throughout the entire history of the military in general. So it's kind of one of those things. But I think the culture of the United States has changed, where now it's acceptable to do those things and people don't really give a shit about it, because a lot of people don't give a shit about marriage.
Sure.
Yeah, I would say that the benefits that the military offers to people that are married is designed for a traditional marriage America, and we don't live in a traditional marriage America anymore. And so like it's so like in the military you can I know for the Marine Corps, I'm not sure about other branches, but like you can actually get punished if you commit adultery. If you can lose rank, you can lose pay. I've seen this happen to guys before. They got caught cheating on their wives and they actually got in trouble for that. And so it's designed for an actual like traditional marriage sense. And just to be blunt, like just how things are, man, like with social media now and Tinder and all that, like a lot of times, like right when the guy leaves, like we'll be like on base and we'll go to like a bar or whatever, and then we hear about this unit that's getting deployed to wherever, and then all of a sudden there's just more women at the bar, and we're like, where did all these women come from? And it's all their husbands went on deployment, so now they're at the bars while their husbands are on deployment. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, it happens a lot.
Okay, so yeah, I'm really glad you said that, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but like too many guys fall into the trap where they say, like, especially all the Daily Wire guys, oh, if men would just be better men, then these women wouldn't do that. But like, look, if women are going seeking guys out to get their rocks off with other dudes as soon as their husbands leave, like, it's not the guy's fault. I'm sorry, that is not the guy's.
Yes. So I'm like a weird personal accountability, responsibility kind of person, where it's like, it's your job to pick a better woman. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that you can always know that that's what's going to happen. But if you're marrying a girl that's around base, has been around military guys their entire life, and this is what happens a lot. If you're around and you're on Tinder and stuff and you're swiping right on those girls and then end up marrying one of them, that's your fault. And that's generally what these guys do. Sometimes it's their high school sweetheart from the small town that has never been in the big city, and now they're stationed in a big city and they get a lot of attention from a lot of different guys because, you know, they're not in this small town anymore. Yeah. But generally they're guys that are stationed on base in the United States. They're swiping right on girls that have been around military dudes their entire life. So they generally have either a general distrust or they don't think it matters. And then they've also been with many military guys because many military guys have swiped right on them on Tinder or fucking whatever else. And then they ended up getting married because they're like, oh, I actually really like this guy. But then they realize once that marriage is a thing, they don't get to go out and flirt around and have all this attention that they used to do. So right when those guys leave, they go out and do it. And so that's kind of like, it's a different mindset. Like women have a different mindset now than they've ever had in the history of human beings, to be just straight up. But at the same time, there's still a lot of women out there that do have, you know, a more traditional mindset, or at least, or at least a loyalty thing, than a lot of women do now. And I think we see it more, but it's probably like getting closer to a 50-50 where there's still, you know, like maybe like a 60-40 split where 60% of women are probably generally like not as promiscuous and not as disloyal and things like that. Like, and 60% of women are in the traditional sense. They may focus on their careers a little bit more, but they're not like a disloyal person. I think we just, because it was like maybe 10% ever in the history of humanity that there was those promiscuous type women, and now it's 40% that we're like, what the fuck? Because it changes the dynamic so much.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I think another dynamic too is, we talked about this before, is so most of the military bases, it's mostly dudes. Like if you see the military, it's like 90% dudes, probably even higher than that. So so you have like 90% military dudes, mostly in shape, have guaranteed security as in paycheck. They can have a car. Usually they have a higher sort of status because they're in the military. Like, everyone knows this. So if you're in a military base and you marry a Marine, or if you're just a girl outside or around the area, well, since there's not as many female to male ratio, like, you have all these guys trying to come at you. And it's like top tier dudes, like good looking, very masculine, and of all ranks too. This goes all the way up to like majors in the military, all that. And so, like, I think it also throws things off too, because now you get girls that, let's just say maybe they're just a 5. You know, she's cute, she's average, you know, whatever, she's fine.
But she's the only thing that all the guys see.
But she's the only thing that all guys see. And all of a sudden, these very attractive guys that have never given her this much attention before are like trying to give her all this attention and curry her over. And so it really just throws things off too, like that. I think that's a dynamic that, because, dude, we say it all the time.
Yeah, it
like,
doesn't get talked about a lot.
A girl in the, like, when you're on base or out training, like a girl that regular back in the city, you would be like, oh, she's a 4, but since she's here, we call her a 7. And it's just because we don't have access to as many girls. So like we see, like,
well, and that's why the joke is, like, there's a lot of guys with really fat wives in the military, like a lot of very, very like muscular dudes that go to the gym every day, and they have like a tank of a woman at
mids,
home. And you're just
or
like,
less.
You're like, what the fuck? Like, it's wild. And so, you know, it's one of those things where the distribution is way out of whack around military bases, and then on top of that, like, idea of marriage and types of women and stuff like that are so much changed, for, you can say for better or for worse, depending on where you're looking at it. For me, I would say worse in a lot of instances, that it's like the perfect storm of what happens in the military. And that's where you get like words like Jody, where it's like the dude that comes over and fucks your wife when you're on deployment, or you get, and the other thing is, like, I'll be very blunt. There's a lot of those dudes that go on deployment, and they're not going to Iraq or Afghanistan. They're going to Bahrain or Guam or Hawaii, and they're husbands, but they're trying to fuck girls at whatever fucking place that they're at. So like the guys aren't the most, aren't the most loyal either. They're all, I don't know if I would say one's worse than the other. They're both generally bad. And, but a lot of the guys, you know, being in the military gives them a status. So there's a lot of women that go after those, especially when you go to the Philippines or Guam or Vietnam or Korea.
You go to those poor countries, dude, they want to come home with you.
They love the American. So it's kind of funny, but like, I think kind of to that whole dynamic, basically, like a dude's gonna want to get laid. So I mean, if you're away from your wife for like an extended period of time, you're gonna get sick of watching Pornhub and rubbing one out in the fucking barracks. Eventually, you're gonna want some kind of connection. But for a woman, you know, if you're around a bunch of fucking, you know, good-looking, affluent dudes who have status because they're in the military, you're probably going to knock one out with them if your husband ain't home, because he ain't there to keep you happy. And there's going to be another dude who's more than willing to do the same thing. Like you said, as soon as all those guys leave, their husbands, then they can start going to the bar and find the next guy. So I think it's really just a bad idea. And you guys would be able to elaborate on this more than me. But like, I think getting married in the military, especially if you're getting deployed, I think that's a horrible idea. And you're just setting people up for divorce.
I told all my junior Marines, every single one, don't get married. Like, I'm sorry, don't get married. Don't get married until you're on your second contract. And even then, think about it. Like, really think about it. Because like, if you're going to stay in, then you're going to have to start your life at some point. But at least by that point, you'll be a little bit older and you'll be a little bit more cautious, because
the rosy glasses will be off your face.
You've seen a thing or two. I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two. You know? No,
Yeah,
like,
and I mean,
it's just like
yeah, being able to see women in that kind of light would kind of give you like the reality, like, oh, okay. So when I get out of here, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you're like, ugh. You're like, wait until you're at your next duty station and it's a brand new crop of women that you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, just wait until like, because it's crazy. You do see a lot of guys get married. I mean, Luke's shop, he had like half the dudes were married. And so like, I would just tell guys like, watch your friend, dude. Watch your friends. Because half these the statistic is like 60% are going to end up divorced. So watch your friends, dude. Watch them in a couple of years. Maybe 2, 3, 4,
Only
whatever.
one of my junior Marines is still married.
Holy fuck. Out of how many? You said you had like 15 or 20, right?
I had like 15 guys at one point, and I think one group of them showed up. Like I got a group of like 6 or 7 guys, and I think 4 of them were married. And so only one of those guys is still married. And then there was other people that got married during. One of the guys that was like on the same level as me, he was like my peer, I guess. He's still married, but they were a very strict Catholic couple from Minnesota, like, and they're still married. And then the other one, they were super young. They got married at like, I think they got married while he was on boot leave, and they had been together in high school. And he's a funny guy. He was one of our buddy Nick that comes on the show every once in a while. It was his best friend, and him and his wife are still together. And I don't think they've ever really had any problems. But they're what were they? Albanian? I think he's Albanian or something like that. But so they have a very
They had
cultural,
a culture that kept
tie to marriage.
Culture that kept them.
Yeah,
they had a culture.
And they're from
that kept them together.
Southern California. I think Albania. It might not be Albania. It's another one of those Eastern Bloc And they weren't very religious, but their families were religious, and
that's together. I think there's something to that. I know people I think when you have a shared culture or shared heritage, not necessarily like related, but shared like culture together. I think that that works a lot better. Where you would see I don't know, you'd see black dudes marrying like Japanese girl in Okinawa, and then you'd see like white dudes marrying Japanese, and that shit so you get back to the States, and it's like a year later she's gone, dude. It's like
I feel like taking a woman out of like a third world country is probably a horrible idea, because like at first you probably think like, oh, she'll be loyal to me because I pulled her out of that. I'm her best option. I did all this stuff for her. But then you bring her over here and she realizes like, oh, everybody over here is like this. So I don't need you
have to get out of the military if you do it. You just have to get out of the military if you do it. You just you marry her, bring her back, you have like a year left on your contract, and then get out of the military and take her back home, because you're like, oh, all right, I need to be around family, and then she's around like a family unit, and it's a lot different. But if you stay on the military base, they've been around military guys too, because everybody goes on deployment there. So it's the same thing as like if they lived in the United States around a military base. So you just and the only times I see it like work is so like black dudes with Asian girls, it's like very highly educated black dudes. Like it sounds bad, and I'm not trying to a racist thing out of it, but it's like very highly educated, like but those ones work out because their family obviously valued, intelligence and, things like that. And a lot of Asian countries value intelligence and, very high amounts of succeeding in their life, and family units are extremely important. And in the Black community, a lot of times when you see, family units that stay together, family units are very important all the way through, like generation after generation. So that's when it usually works out. A lot of white guys and Asian couples, they don't usually work out. Like it's just a weird mix. I've seen that too. Usually the Asian girl finds somebody else to go after when they come back to base. But it's just a weird thing. But yeah, I always recommended my Marines, I was like, don't get fucking married. Like, don't get fucking married. Wait till your second contract if you stay. And if you don't stay, wait until you get out of the military, because it's just not worth it. So many of them. The military have the highest divorce rate out of any of the other branches by like a significant margin. I think ours are like 70-30, like 70% of marriages fail.
Yeah, it's bad.
Like it's
really
an
bad.
insane amount. And you know, domestic violence is very high in the military as well.
Yeah, I had that divorce lawyer on, James Sexton, and he always brings up that 56% of marriages fail, and then I think it's like the majority of those people who get divorced are typically married within like 2 to 5 years after. So, and then like every marriage after that is more likely to be divorced again.
Yeah.
So it's a fucked up situation, man. And, you know, I agree with you guys. I would like it if we had a culture that was more appreciative of marriage, but like how the fuck you turn the ship around when we have social media and women can get all the free attention from guys all around the world and dudes can sedate themselves with free 4K streaming porn all day, every day. I don't know how you fucking, you know, solve these problems. I think we got to live with them some way, somehow. But, you know, I like I said, I don't have any good answers, but you know, people are we're just gonna have to figure it out. That's all, because they ain't going away.
Yeah,
people
basically.
are like, oh, let's they're like, oh, let's ban porn. I'm like, yeah, how will that work? Just walk me through how that'll
Good
work
luck.
and we can talk about it. But like, you know, every single technological advance that we've ever made, people found a way to like fuck with it or, you know, use it for porn. So like, it's not going away.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I would just leave it at this for me is like, I think we are at a time where as men, especially like us, this is where you can make your ultimate stand. It's like you can lead the courageous life, the brave life, and do things the way that you think should be done and become pinnacles in your society, in your community. And that's what you should do. Even though everything looks horrible right now and it looks fucking, you know, the bleakest of bleak, as we've talked about on this show, even though it looks horrible, probably the best thing that you can do and your greatest contribution to your community and society is to become that pinnacle and that person of value and morals that brings it back into your community, because if you don't, then who will? And
absolutely,
that's the only way to get it back to where it is. And so that's kind of like how I've kind of taken it, is like, all right, well, if this is what I truly believe in and I think this is how it should be, then I have to do it, because I can't expect other people to do it, because obviously they're not. So it has to be me.
Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of why I always say, like, you need to be prosperous for yourself and then kind of lead the world in the direction that you want to go.
Yeah, it's kind of like how a lot of people argue, like, that's what America was supposed to be. Like, we were supposed to be the shining beacon on the hill and just doing everything right, and we'd lead by example. Well, America didn't end up that way. So, like, I think it has to be, like, the individuals have to, because, you know, like, I don't know, I think a lot of people just, like all those traditions just weren't enforced. Those institutions either were too weak, like they let other cultural influences take over, and you know, like maybe a lot of people can argue we got away from like religion. I don't know, but there's just a lot of things that like we've changed over the years, and I think there is a lot of traditional things that like I think made our society a lot better that we can get back to. But I like Luke, I think both you guys are saying, like, you kind of have to lead by example and like be that example for other people and be like, wow, like this guy's, you know, leading, him and his wife have this sort of traditional style and it works out for well. And I think that's the best way what we can do. It's like, I don't think we're going to be able to change people's minds overnight. I think this is going to be like a generational thing that we have to like work toward. And I don't think it's going to be something that I don't even think we'll fix it in our generation. I think like once like our age gets into like 40s and 50s, I think there's going to be a lot of regret from our generation about what we did when we were younger for men and women. And I think the best thing we can do is just set the example for the next generation.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. I think that's probably a good place to cap it off, gentlemen. We went about an hour and a half, and I think this was a fucking awesome show, so we'll definitely have to do it again sometime. Go ahead, give Jens his plugs, and we'll rock and roll on out of here.
Yeah, you can find me at Keep It Real Luke on Twitter and Instagram. Our show is called Binding the Bullet. We also do 5 Till Midnight with the whole blast that we got. It's been really fun. But yeah, you can find Biting the Bullet at Biting the Bullet Pod on Twitter and Biting the Bullet memes, I think, now on Instagram. Is that right? Yeah.
It's like our third account. Yeah.
I was gonna say after a few Instagrams got nuked. Typo, go ahead.
Yeah. So at the Real Typo on Twitter or X, whatever. That's pretty much where I post the most. You can follow me on Instagram if you want. I don't really post on there as much, but it's Axe Throwing Typo. And yeah, me and Luke do a podcast 5 to midnight. Kyle probably does enough plugs for that. So, but that's all I got.
Cool. Well, don't forget, vote Typo if you're in Israel for the Likud party. And until next time, everybody, rock and roll. Yeah, write him in. He's going to be running against Netanyahu, so it'll be an interesting election. Typo might get assassinated in between, but I heard there's IDF snipers probably sitting outside.
That'd be great for the show.
I mean, to be fair, we were just telling Sam to say from the river to the sea.
Yeah, you guys just change it to 4 to midnight and don't even mention anything.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Everybody, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. I appreciate these guys coming on. Catch us on 5 till midnight and all that good stuff. And until next time, everybody, take care.